Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Good morning, Dana. How are you and where are you?
Good morning. I just drove back to Kentucky yesterday, came up to Indiana this morning to visit my office here. Tomorrow I'll be in Dayton, which I'll miss you because you won't be there.
Yes, I'm going to miss it.
I know. And then I got my world tour this week. Then Indiana, or then Columbus, then Richmond, all over the place. What
Awesome.
about you guys?
I always ask well, I'm in Texas and I've been here a long time. You know me, I don't stay put too long. And so I think I'm on I don't even know how many days, maybe 60 or 90, which seems like eternity.
Oh my gosh.
I have canceled so many trips. I've canceled Hawaii, Ohio,
San Diego. Are you still going to
San Diego, Missouri, Boise, Idaho. Did I say that already? I mean, I've canceled 5 trips. It's unbelievable.
I'm gonna have to come. I'm gonna have to fly out there and see you then, since you aren't even. Speaking of, I gotta tell you this really fast. I meant to tell you this before we started recording, but I listened to a podcast yesterday on the Mylett podcast. Did you know that there's some longevity center in San Diego that's one of the? Have you been there?
No, but there is a trip that Peter Diamandis does. I was thinking, who in the world would do something like this with me? So I sent the information to Diana.
Yeah, she would.
He does them either in Boston or San Diego each year. So next year should be San Diego. And it was Boston this year. And this year, did I tell you about the new kind of Uber plane that's out there where you can call it and in 2 hours it'll be wherever you are. And a plane, and it can pretty much land anywhere. It doesn't need a long runway. I forgot what they're called, but anyway, they got to fly on one of those from one location to the other. Wow. It has a parachute, so if something happens to the pilot, it'll parachute you down. I think there's an article, if you Google it, where it already saved a Walmart executive because they had to use the parachute. And if something happens to the pilot, it'll just take you back to the nearest airport and land you.
Oh my gosh.
That's cool. So I got a feeling that stuff's going to be coming. But anyway, in this longevity group, which is super, super expensive to do, so it's on my goal sheet to do, he takes you to all the places where there is new longevity stuff coming up, and you listen to all the people and everything, and you get, to try some of the product and all that kind of stuff. Wow. So I'm sure that's one of the locations that they go to, but yeah, that trip's definitely on my list in 2022. Yeah.
They were talking about living to 150, and I thought about you the whole entire time. Yes. I'll have to do this podcast. It was really good. I can't think of the gentleman's name that he was interviewing, but anyway, it was really good. But he is based out of that longevity center in San Diego, and so I was like, man, I wonder if Linda knows about that.
Well, I don't know a lot about that center, but I'm going to venture to bet it's probably one of the locations that they stop at, but I'd love to hear that. So yeah, send that to me.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
So you and I both have been, I've been on Zoom classes, but you've actually been somewhere in person recently. So tell us about that.
Yes, I just got back from the Live to Lead John Maxwell event in Atlanta last Friday. Took really our whole group down there, leadership teams in all 3 of our offices. And we had and then Josh and Heath went, and Adam took some of his crew. We had a big crew that went. It was awesome. But we heard some of the best people, and it felt so good to be in person with everybody together. Last year I watched it on Zoom, but this year it was great. But John opened, and then Jamie Kern-Lima spoke, and we got to have a private Q&A breakfast with her, and I got to ask her a really great question. She was the founder of IT Cosmetics. For those of our listeners that don't know who she is, she wrote a book called Believe It, and she sold her company to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion with a B dollars, which is just wild. Jeff Henderson was there, and so we got to hear Jeff again. We've had him on before. Ed Mylett, just absolutely, oh my gosh, Ed Mylett was wild. He did an incredible job. And then Joel Manby, he was awesome, the author of Love Works. We've read that before.
And he's also the one that on Love Works, did they also do the I get two books confused. Are they part of the amusement park thing?
Yes. Yeah, Dollywood.
And also where we went in Branson.
Yeah, in Branson. Yeah,
Silver City.
Hold
Silver
on
City.
a minute. Persian Family Enterprises. That's it. That's it.
Silver Dollar City. I have read that book before. I love that book. And
great.
You live it when you go to Silver Dollar City. That is the coolest place ever. The people are so gracious and kind and
that's the same
service oriented.
Yeah, it was really great. And then I didn't realize this until he spoke, but he was on Undercover Boss, and they showed a clip of it, and it was like the coolest thing. But his speech was awesome. I mean, there was tons of really great people that spoke. It was wonderful. And then
does he actually run those organizations for that family? Is that what he does?
Yeah, I don't know if he still does it today. He was 25 years as the CEO of Persian Family Enterprises. He also was the CEO of Saab before that, the automobile industry. And then he was the director and CEO of SeaWorld when SeaWorld was getting all that flack from PETA and all this other stuff. He was the CEO at the time. And so he shared some of those stories, which were wild. But he basically assists different boards in transforming their organization. But he was just with the amusement parks for the longest.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, he was great.
So give me some. Well, I this past week was at the masterminds, the leadership masterminds, and loved it. We had two amazing speakers. One was Liz Wiseman, which I had heard a few years before from Exchange with John Maxwell, and she was one of my favorites. You know how some of them just you connect and you're like, okay, I need this. Well, Liz Wiseman, her first book was called Multipliers, which I love. And it's one of those things that I always say, like, once you know something, you can't pretend you don't. And so you're constantly saying, did I handle that like a multiplier or was I a diminisher? And so that's what I want to talk about a little bit today, some of the highlights that stuck out at me from her. And then there was another speaker that I also loved called Katie Miltman, and she wrote a book, How to Change. And it's so good, and just really, I'm going to go back and re-listen to her book. I went ahead and downloaded her book, and I'm going to re-listen to it. And then Liz has a new book called Impact Players. I haven't read it yet, but I plan on doing it.
I didn't know she had. I love multipliers. I didn't know she had a new book.
Yeah, and multipliers is kind of like one of those, like I always say about fierce conversations, one time is not enough. Honestly, with something like that, you've got to revisit and revisit and revisit. And it's pretty convicting because I realize that sometimes just kind of certain ways you are could be a diminisher and you don't even realize it because that's not what's in your heart, but that's what gets kind of feels like. And so what it feels like matters more than what I think it feels like or is in my heart. So it was pretty convicting for me this time to realize I got a lot of work still to do in this area, I think, because sometimes I think when we have passion around something, it can come off in more of a diminishing way than it can in a multiplying way. So
yeah, I agree with that.
So what were some of your highlights?
Okay, let's see. The first one was John Maxwell opened, and he went back over the 21 irrefutable laws. He didn't do all of them, but he has a new updated 21 irrefutable laws coming out, I think early next year, he said. Mm-hmm. And he really wanted to focus on law number 11, which is the law of your inner circle. And it was so good. I took so many notes on this. He said those that are closest to you determine your level of success. Mm-hmm. And so he said you need to spend 80% of your time with your 20% people. And then he gave this analogy of two buckets, one bucket filled with gasoline and one bucket filled with water. And he said your people are always carrying both buckets, and they can be your greatest asset or your greatest liability depending on when something happens. Are they dumping water on it, like trying to put it out and take care of it, or are they dumping gasoline on it, trying to make it bigger than what it actually needs to be? He said that they put one or the other whenever there's a problem. And so we talked a lot about that. But then he gave 7 questions, and I just want to share them really fast because they were so good. And he said, these are the questions that you need to ask when you're determining your inner circle or even the ones that you already have. Number one, do they live out good values? Like basically just, are they a good person? Number two, do they have high influence with others? Because leadership, you have to have they have to have influence. Number three, do they have giftedness that complements the team? So are their gifts higher than most in their area? Number four, can they lead well and equip others? Meaning, can they work themselves out of a job, basically, because they're so talented? Number five, are they a good fit for the inner circle? Meaning, do they socially fit in? And that made me think about the barbecue test. Like, do you actually like to hang out with them? Number six, can they produce outstanding results? Because at the end of the day, they have to produce results or they can't be a part of the inner circle. And then the last one, number seven, was, do they value people and serve them? And he said, do they truly want to wake up every day and serve other people? Because he said, if I see you as valued, then I will want to serve you every day. And so he just went on to talk a lot about the importance of your inner circle and the people that you have around you and on your team. And I thought, gosh, that's just so good to keep thinking about that and revisiting it and just pouring into really your actual inner circle.
Wow, I love that. And, it's funny because the past week or so I heard through the grapevine, don't know if it's accurate or not, but I heard of a leader that had said, basically they were saying, even though they were a leader of realtors, they were saying that they were idiots or dummies or whatever. And I've seen other people do that too. And nothing makes me madder than to have someone who they're supposed to be serving, and they look at them like they're stupid or idiots. And I'm thinking, is that really serving them? And why are you even in this industry if that's the way you feel about the people? Does that make sense?
That reminds me of what Andy Stanley says: when you stop loving your people, you need to stop leading your people.
Yeah. And I'm not sure some of these leaders ever loved them in the first place. Yeah. And it always used to irritate me to be around them and them talk in such a way that they felt like the agent was the stupid one. And I want to say, well, honestly, I think you're the stupid one because you're the one that's supposed to be serving these people, and all you can do is talk about how stupid they are. So
yeah,
it was irritating to me. But yeah, those are great 7 points.
Yeah, he did a great job with that. It was just a reminder. He said that's one of the main laws, that one, and the law number 21, which is the law of legacy, because John's really into leaving a legacy right now. And he talked about companions, just who's going with you as you leave your legacy, and because you want to climb up and still keep going, but you need to do it with companions that can actually live out your legacy. And he talked about Mark Cole and just how this was really good. He said he never promoted Mark. The people promoted Mark. Like everybody in the company John said finally he was like, okay, I guess I got to sit down and figure out what I'm going to do with Mark, because everybody just keeps saying that he has to do more. But he said, this was I highlighted this and circled it and started. He said he hasn't gone from position to position. He has grown from position to position.
I love
that there's such a difference in that. But yeah, John's part was really, really great. He opened and closed, and it was awesome.
And, I think because there's so much information out there and there's so many great books like John's and many other people, that you have to be careful, because I think people can have the rhetoric of these qualities, but not really have these qualities.
Yeah.
I know you've probably had it happen to you, and I've had it happen to me, where I really felt like, and I'm going to take full blame for it, I probably didn't inspect for these enough. But I thought, or I assumed that they had them, and then I was shocked and later to find out that either the words they used were rhetoric to make me feel like they had these things, or I didn't investigate enough to really genuinely see, are these qualities there?
Yeah. Well, you actually just said exactly what Jamie Kern-Lima talked about, which was that she said that everybody always asks her, like, how did she do what she do? And she got so many no's, and how in the world did one day she end up selling $1.2 billion cash to L'Oreal? And she, like, when did she know what to do and all this stuff? And anyway, she basically said, you can like hear all these people and you can do all this stuff, but that until you take enough time to be still for yourself and really listen to what's around you and follow your intuition, she said that she thinks that's why 9 out of 10 people give up too soon, or they fail, or they can't surround themselves with the right people, or they don't make the right decisions, because they aren't in tune enough to be still. For her, it was her faith, but to actually listen to your own intuition to pick up on those things. And I was like, oh Lord, she's talking straight to me. I felt like I was in church, when you're like, oh yeah, you preached this one right for me, because she was just saying like, and I'm guilty of this, go, 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 go. And really we have to be still enough to actually, listen and be able to follow our intuition. And I think that when we do that, we can pick up better on even other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, with some of the stuff that Liz said, part of the way that you have the time and the ability to be still is you trust more on what she would call impact players. And the way you get impact players is to make sure that you're a multiplier leader, right? And you're not a diminisher leader, right? So a couple of her things that she talked about, and so I'm going to kind of read you the accidental diminisher tendencies, because I don't think anybody on purpose is a diminisher, but I think by accident we all do it to some degree. But one was an idea fountain, and that is, somebody that just has a million ideas, and I guess your people kind of get whiplash on your million ideas. Yeah, it's the kind of the thought I saw with this one. Yeah. And one of the ways she said, so she gave the accidental diminishers, and then she gave the experiment or for something for you to try. If you feel like, so as I read these, some of you in the audience may resonate with one or more of these. I know I did. And so she gave you an idea to try if you felt like that was your diminishing quality, your accidental diminishing quality. So in this case, if you feel like you're an idea fountain where you've got a million ideas and you're just throwing them at people, giving people whiplash, then go into lead a meeting or conversation by only asking questions, where you can't make any statements. You have to ask questions.
Love that.
And then a leader that was always on. In other words, they're just, you kind of think about it, they kind of exhaust you. They're just the leader is just always on. And so a couple of things that the exercise you could do is, one is called Name the Genius, where you identify what the people on your team do easily and freely so that you can better utilize their native genius. And so it's not always you having to be on, you're actually passing that baton on to some of your people. And then another exercise for always on that you could try is play fewer chips. In a meeting, give yourself a budget of chips, with each chip representing a comment or contribution in the meeting. So I think this is kind of like, remember the old thing where if you thought something negative, whatever, you had a rubber band and you popped it on your wrist. Yeah. If you've heard that, this is kind of like that. So what would be really cool is if you feel like that's you could lay even some poker chips in front of you. No one would have to know what they mean. But every time you made a comment, you could just slide one under or away from somewhere and give yourself a chance to know, okay, I'm about to use up all my chips, right? And then another one would be the same one we said before, lead a meeting and ask by only asking questions. And then another exercise for somebody who feels like they're the leader that's always on is give 51% of the vote to someone else. So put someone else in charge by giving that person the majority vote on an issue or a project.
Oh, I like that.
And then the next one is called Rescuer. And I felt like this one was probably me, because I feel like sometimes if my people don't do something quick enough or get the results I want quick enough, I tend to start putting on my calendar and my schedule their job description.
Yep.
So
I can do it.
For Rescuer, it was number one, you got to do an exercise called Make Space for Mistakes. Define a space, project types of work, or aspects of the business where people can experiment, take risk, and recover from mistakes. Because if you're always a rescuer, a lot of times you go in and rescue before the mistakes actually get made, and the mistakes are where the lessons get learned.
That's good. Yep.
Love that one. And then if you're a rescuer, you can do the 51% vote thing. And then there's one I love called Give It Back. So you can think about a pencil, keep a pencil in your hand. If someone needs help, jump in and contribute, but then clearly give ownership back to the other person. In other words, give them every chance to solve it. If you need to add a little bit of value, do, but then always give the pencil back to them to finish the project.
Yep. Love that too. Man, these are good.
They're good. And then the next one is the Pacesetter. This is someone who gets so far out ahead that they think they're setting the pace for their people, but what they're really doing is making their people give up hope because you're too far ahead. And I always think about when we went to SealFit years ago, one of the mantras was, it's easier to stay up than to catch up, right?
Yeah.
People give up when it's time, when they need to catch up. They get exhausted and they just quit. So with a Pacesetter, they do what they call supersize it, where you give someone a job or a task that is a size too big and help them level up and grow into the role. So give them some stretch goals of things that they can try. And I always think about, I don't think I've ever gone over the decision tree. In Fierce, remember the decision tree where you decide what level you're going to give somebody a task?
Oh, yeah. And, the branches,
And if it's at the root, then, they get full authority. And if it's, a leaf, then, they got to bring all the answers to you. So that's another great way to think about it, is start thinking about what task could you give up and give them a chance to do something big, level up and grow into that role.
Love
and
that.
Then the next one a Pacesetter can do is they can talk up their own mistakes. In other words, invite experimentation and learning by sharing your own mistakes.
Yep.
I think a lot of times a Pacesetter, people, they're so far out in advance, people think they've never made a mistake. So just being honest and sharing your own mistakes would be a great thing to do.
Yep, love that.
And then create a stretch challenge. This is kind of like the other one. Instead of giving people a goal, lay down a concrete challenge, define an intriguing puzzle to be solved or a question to be answered.
Yep, that's great.
When I listen to these, a lot of them tied into same things from Fierce, like the beach ball conversation, the mineral rights conversation. But I love it when two great ideas collide. In other words, you hear it, but you hear it a different way, because to me that tells me there's so much truth in it.
Yeah.
And you better not ignore it, right?
Yeah.
The next one is the rapid responder. And this is just someone who jumps into action quickly. And there's 2 exercises you can do for that. It's number 1, lead a meeting where you only ask questions. You're not allowed to make any statements yourself. And this one's similar. Some of these are similar. And then the next one is make a debate. Instead of offering a fast answer on a critical decision, outline the options and ask people to weigh in with data and their point of view. And I really thought of the beach ball here.
Yeah, it's very similar.
You could say, if I were going to make a decision today, here's what I would do. But from where you sit, what would you do?
Yeah.
People feel so valued when they're asked what should they do, right?
Yeah, that's super similar to beach ball in Fierce. I love that one.
Yeah. And then optimist. This is where they just think that nothing can go wrong. In other words, the whole group feels like nothing is able to go wrong. So the exercises for this one is talk up your mistakes, invite experimentation and learning by sharing your own mistakes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Optimist, yeah. So in other words, if they know that you're always super optimistic, they don't want to share when things aren't going right with you, because they know that you're just super optimistic that nothing ever goes wrong, right? So sharing some mistakes and ways that it's gone wrong would be one. Talk up your mistakes. Make space for mistakes. Make sure that people understand that it's okay to take risk and that we will always recover from those mistakes. I love this story, and I don't remember where it was from, where this person made like $100,000 mistake. And someone said, well, are you going to fire them? And they said, heck no, because that was a $100,000 lesson that we won't have to get again. Right. So that's a great way to look at it, even if it cost money. And I always think about John, not Asraf, but John, I'll think of it in a minute. But he always says, if money can fix it, it ain't a problem. It's a situation. And so let them know that it's okay to make mistakes, because I think sometimes people are so afraid of making mistakes that they don't try things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And then for optimists, there's one more exercise called make a debate. Instead of offering fast answers on a critical decision, outline the options and ask people for what they think. So again, some of these are overlapped.
But it's kind of neat because you can use them for different things.
Yeah. And then there's 3 more: protector. And so this one is, again, give someone a job or a task that's way bigger than them. And then make space for mistakes, and then create a stretch challenge. So those are all 3 that all of them we've talked about before. And then the strategist, where you have the strategy, and so what you want to do is try to find somebody else's genius in it. Where's their genius in the strategy of what needs to be done? So in other words, you might be such a bold visionary that nobody else has to act on it. You just are doing all of it. And so this one would be: name someone else's genius, play fewer chips, learn to ask questions and don't make statements, create a stretch challenge. And then the last one is perfectionist, where everything has to be perfect. And this is one where people will turn in their stuff incomplete because they know you're going to make it perfect, right? In other words, they know that it's never going to be good enough, right? So a couple exercises there is: talk up your mistakes, make space for mistakes, ask questions, and then give 51% of the vote to someone else. So I can't read her book, Impact Players. I love this. I found several places where I thought, oh man, I could accidentally be diminishing. And I think also as a leader, the more space you give yourself to respond, the more chance you have to recognize, am I about to be an accidental diminisher?
Yep.
And I know that's my issue, because when you're a quick start, things barely filter through your brain before they come out your mouth.
Yep.
And so I really have to learn to give myself a few minutes. And any time where I've not, and I'm passionate about the subject, I think my tone and my speed of talking could diminish other people.
Yeah, that's a really great point. There's another OP in another region that's a friend of mine, and he just started doing the strategic coaching. And so he told me, and he sent me a screenshot, and he was in 9 quick start, and he said, "What does this mean?" And I wrote back, "Good luck."
Yeah.
I was like, "Your quick start," and he just was laughing. But I totally can see that. I'm just looking at these, trying to think. I'm probably definitely guilty of the idea fountain.
Yeah.
And a little bit of the perfectionist, for sure. I feel like I get a lot of projects that the teams give to me that aren't 100% complete, because then they know that I'll go make them perfect.
Yeah.
And really, I don't need to be probably spending time doing half of that stuff. So these are great to look through and really try to figure out which one you might be. Well, more than one. There's probably more than one, but being able to understand it.
Yeah, and give yourself space so that you're not, because I think every one of these, she calls them accidental diminisher tendencies on purpose, because I don't think you knowingly do these things. I think you accidentally do these things.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Man, I'm just trying to look through. I had so many. Let's see, what's the last thing I want to share with you? I think probably Ed Mylett. Oh my gosh. So I listen to his podcast, and sometimes I think, to be transparent, he has a big ego, and so I'm like, I don't know. But he has the best guest on. And so guests, he always interviews the best guest. And so that's why one of the reasons why I love his podcast. But Adam has always said, when you hear or meet him in person, you'll see a different side of him. So it was interesting to see him in person, and I really did. I left like he was one of my favorites. I mean, I liked him so much more. But he talked about influence and persuasion, and he said the biggest question that you need to think about is, how do you actually make people feel? Because influence is energy. And he said, how intentional are we being about our energy? Because he said, we are always making people feel one way or another. And are we being intentional with realizing how we actually make people feel? And he talked about people don't have to believe what you're saying, but they have to believe that you believe what you're saying. And so he talked a lot about like just confidence and all those things. And then he said that ultimately we're all selling happiness. Like no matter if you're selling real estate or a product or an automobile or whatever it is, you're really selling happiness. And he said that's the ultimate end message with anything and everything is that people want to be loved and cared about and they want to be helped somehow. But he said, this was probably my favorite quote of the whole entire day. He said, always remember that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And I was like, man, that's so good. I don't know who said that before or who he got that from, but I was like, that's because I think we always think about we have to be like super qualified to be able to do something. And he wasn't. But he told this crazy story, and it's a long story, so I'll just make it brief. But he was talking about his son, whose name is Max, and he said that Ed is like this guy's guy, and his dad is, and his whole family is, and they've all played football and just all these sports, and they're just like dudes, he called it. And then he said he had his son Max, and he said we still to this day don't know whether he's left-handed or right-handed. Like he's never been good at sports. He's never been, his whole life he just wasn't into it. And he said I always just was like, this is who he is. We're just gonna have fun. Like Max, it's just all about having fun. And so he said that Max signed up to play golf because Ed likes to play golf, and so they were playing in all these golf leagues. And he said that Max was always the very last to finish by like 29 strokes. Like he said he was just the absolute worst, the last. And so he said that they were playing in this father-son tournament thing, and Max was down by like 19, I don't play golf. I don't know. I think it's called strokes, 19 points or whatever. And he said that this other dad looked at Max, and it was time to go get lunch and take a break. And he said, you know what? He said, Max just does this for fun. He's never going to catch up. So Max, why don't you go grab all the boys' lunches while the boys warm up? And Ed said, I really don't want to cuss in this room right now because John Maxwell is sitting right here. But he said, I looked at his dad and I said, what the F did you just say to my son? And he said that he was like, that's it. So he said he totally changed his tune after 8 years of saying, we're just doing this for fun, Max. Just go out and have fun. He said that he was like, Max, we're doing this to win. We're winning. Forget the fun. Do everything I tell you to do. And he said that Max was like, oh my gosh, okay, like what do I do? And so long story short, he said he told him every club to take and every way to hit. And Max ended up winning that golf tournament. And he said that from there on, like his shoulders were back and he stood a little taller. And so long story short, he ended up like 8 years later getting a golf scholarship to a great school. And now he's a great golfer. But he told the story because he said he was just saying that you have to have the confidence like first. And sometimes we just need one more conversation or one more game or one more day or one more whatever to really get where it is that you're going so that you can have like a little, he talked about, he's called it momentum. He said, all you need, no matter what you're at in your life, is just a little bit of momentum. Because when you get a little bit of momentum, then like you're on a roll. You keep planting seeds. And then he said another thing is that if you feel like you're not winning in your life, he said sometimes you just need to get proximity to winning. Like you need to get around other people that are winning or other things that are winning, because he said it actually pulls you in. And he said, winning is more fun than fun is fun. And so that's when he ended up always telling Max, like, I know this was just for fun, but like, now we're going to win, buddy. Like winning is more fun than fun is fun. And so it was just hilarious, but it made me love him even more because he said that we all kind of have sometimes that time in us where we're like, I just don't know if we want to keep doing this, or I don't know if we're not in a winning season. And he said you just have to give yourself like one more day or one more little bit of momentum because that's how you win. I was just like, oh my gosh, I just loved it. I thought it was the best story.
That's so true. That reminds me of the story when I called Joe Harker and said, I think maybe I made a mistake here trying to build this region for Keller Williams. I'm letting everybody down. I don't know. There's only one or two people I could have said that to. I wouldn't have said that out loud to anyone else, especially the people that were trying to follow me, right? But I called him and said, I just don't know if I feel like I'm letting everybody down. I can't seem to win at this, right? I'm 3 years in. I have no market centers that have agreed to do Keller Williams. I don't know. I'm leaving my family. This is crazy. I'm leaving a great real estate business. And I just never forget, he said, you can't quit. I said, I can't. He said, no, you can't, because you don't know if you're on the 5-yard line or the 50. And I thought, you know what? I'm on the 5. I just know it. And that's what that story reminds me of. It's just that little bit of momentum or being around, thinking you're close to winning, right? And I think that's why we quit sometimes is we don't know how close we really are, right?
Yeah.
You don't realize that it's a gradually and then suddenly, and you just think the suddenly is never going to come. What does Ed do?
He has been an entrepreneur. He has his podcast, Max Out Your Life podcast. I think he just owns like a ton of businesses, and I don't know really. He's just he talked about how he's had hundreds of businesses that he's bought and then made them great and then sold them. And I think he's just an entrepreneur. I don't know. But his dad just passed away, and he was telling all these stories about his dad at the end. But he said that one of the reasons why you can't give up and why you really have to focus on, that little bit of momentum and winning is because that's how you honor the other people that have gone before you, or you honor those that are around you. And he talked a lot about honor at the end. And it was just, he just did a really good job. Actually, believe it or not, I had the least amount of notes from his speech. And it was because I was so intently listening that I couldn't even write it down. So Adam actually, we get the recording, but Adam audio recorded it like you do on his Otter thing. And so I was like, I got to go back and listen to it this week so I can get more notes, because he just had you know what, Linda, this is the last thing I'll say. Every one of those speakers, and we've talked about this before, what made them so great, in my opinion, is every one of them, and John's like this too, is they're amazing storytellers. They can tell a story. Jamie told a story that had everybody in tears. Jeff Henderson told his great story of Chick-fil-A and when he spent all that money on those cows, and then the game went to crap and everybody threw the cows on the field. And he said, your mistake you think you might be having a bad day, but your bad day wasn't all over ESPN for weeks. But all of them were just so great at telling stories. And I thought, I'm going to go back out and reread Donald Miller's or Story Brand, or whatever, I can't think of the name of it, but his book, because everybody it's just like what you say, people are only going to do what they self-discover, and that's through questions, stories, and experiences. And these people are such great storytellers that it just you're like, yeah, I can do it. I got it, because of their stories.
Well, and it's part of the reason as a leader, you want to get up and try things that take courage. Because when you do something that takes courage, there's going to be some stories that come out of that.
Totally.
And people, we're a society that doesn't want to make any mistakes. We want to get to the finish line and not have made any mistakes. And yet it's the mistakes that as we have stories around those, people can relate the most to. Yeah. I always say that a thing that gives me the most validity most of the time is the things of where we've made mistakes, or we've failed, or we've gotten over an obstacle or something. And so I think we have to be okay with trying things that are so scary that we're going to make a few mistakes along the way. And that's where our stories are going to come from.
Yeah. I don't remember which one of the pastors we listen to, I don't know which one it is, but one of them says people look up to you and they admire you because of your successes, but they actually connect with you through your failures. Yeah. And that's so true, because you're like, oh man, you sucked at that too? Perfect. Well, then we sucked at it together, and here's how we can win, instead of all the things that you do great all the time.
Well, and that is what gives that person hope. Oh, if they can have those kind of, obstacles or issues or whatever and do it, then maybe I can too, because I can see myself in that same story.
Yep. So true.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Dana. So we will, I still got one more person, and then I'll finish up how to change, and I'll add some comments from that to our next podcast. And I've got some great.
We'll have to do this part two. We'll have to do a second part to this, because I want to hear your other one about change. And then I had Tim Elmore and a couple more. Yeah. So this will be good.
Okay, great. We'll do part 2 of that. And then we've got you and I have been talking about some great guests we're going to have lined up. So we've got some good stuff coming. And remember, if you haven't hit subscribe, please do that right now. And the greatest compliment you can give Dana and I is a 5-star review, so that other people can find our podcast. And remember, if you can think of anyone else that would benefit from our conversations, be sure and pass our podcast along. If you have a question, comment, or challenge that you'd like for Dana and I to cover on the podcast, or even a great guest that you'd like for us to interview, please reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. And Dana, I am so sad I'm going to miss you at Leadership tomorrow.
I know.
Be sure and let me know how it goes, and I will see you in a few weeks at John Maxwell.
Sounds good. See you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.